Have you ever had a daunting task, something so large or complicated or confounding that you just don't even want to look at it? You're just overwhelmed with the idea of it. I want to talk a little bit about Nehemiah and the task that he had, how he could have been overwhelmed, but how he approached it, and the lessons that we can learn as we seek to go into hard circumstances, rebuilding things, trying to put things back together, and see how his faith in the Lord was at the core of what enabled him to do it. Let me read from Nehemiah chapter 2, beginning in verse 1. Now again, Nehemiah has been in exile in Persia, and he's going back to Jerusalem to help rebuild the walls after they had been destroyed. Verse 9 in chapter 2. Then I came to the governors of the province beyond the river and gave them the king's letters. That was his letters to pass through safely. Now the king had sent with me officers of the army and horsemen. But when Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite's servant heard this, it displeased them greatly that someone had come to seek the welfare of the people of Israel. They like neighbors being weak, because it means they can exploit them. They don't want a strong neighbor on their border. So I went to Jerusalem and was there 3 days. Then I arose in the night, and I and a few men with me, and I told no one what my God had put into my heart to do for Jerusalem. There was no animal with me but the one on which I rode. I went out by the valley gate to the dragon spring and to the dung gate, and I inspected the walls of Jerusalem that were broken down and its gates that had been destroyed by fire. Then I went on to the fountain gate and to the king's pool, and there was no room for the animal that was under me to pass. Then I went up in the night by the valley and inspected the wall, and I turned back and entered by the valley gate, and so returned. And the officials did not know where I had gone or what I was doing, and I had not yet told the Jews, the priests, the nobles, the officials, and the rest of who were to do the work. Then I said to them, "You see the trouble we are in, how Jerusalem lies in ruins and its gates burned. Come, let us build the wall of Jerusalem, that we may no longer suffer derision." And I told them of the hand of my God that had been upon me for good, and also of the words that the king had spoken to me. And they said, "Let us rise up and build." So they strengthened their hands for the good work. I remember a number of years ago, not just a few years ago, a stall in the stock market. Maybe you remember that. On November 19th, 2021, the U.S. Dow Industrial dropped over 900 points. And this was maybe a little bit surprising for people. We were starting to come out of COVID, and people were like, "Oh, it's going to be a great time." But now the reality was starting to set in. You know, the government subsidies were beginning to dry up, and there were problems in the economy, and it just fell. Now, there was some recovery of that 900 points, but really that was the beginning of an official downturn in the economy, and kind of, continued to slide down until June 2022, when we were officially in a bear market. Quarterly reports come out generally after June, and I would imagine that many people got their quarterly report in the mail and just didn't want to open it, didn't want to look at it and see how bad the damage had been. Maybe if I don't look at it, and if I don't have to assess my standard of living, spending habits, it'll all go away and I won't even notice it. Well, that kind of wishful thinking usually leads to trouble. But if I do look, I might be overwhelmed with the implications, be intimidated by it. But the Lord wants us not simply to live a good life, but He wants us to be honest with Himself, with ourselves, and take a look at the damage, because it's only then that we can address what's really going on and actually experience healing and restoration. And that's where Nehemiah is. I mean, he's gone back to Jerusalem and he's assessing things. This is how he goes about the work. Again, we might be overwhelmed, but how do we address it? How do we practically walk through this and look to the Lord? The first thing he does is he reflects. He goes and he assesses the wall. He takes that trip with his horse around the wall, assessing the gates, and some of it's so bad he can't even ride his horse around. He has to go on foot to assess it. But once he gets that assessment, an honest look, and what enables him to do that is that he knows that God is with him. God is for what we're doing. God is for me. I don't know how this is going to play out, but I can trust in that. So I can look. I can see how bad it really is. And then he comes to those that need to join in to work with him. He hadn't told them that he was going to rebuild the wall or going to try to rebuild the wall with them. But now he does. He reveals it. Hey, you see the trouble that we're in. Oh, thanks for the pep talk, Nehemiah. We need to be honest. Hey, it's bad. But here's the thing. God is with us. And we know what God wants to do. Maybe we don't have a project where we know God wants to build the walls of our house or whatever it is, but we do know this, that God wants to bring spiritual redemption to us, healing. He wants us to move forward in our relationships, in our marriage, in our families, in our communities. Do you believe that? Brings it to the people there. Hey, this is what we think. I think we should do. And, they were a little bit overwhelmed by it. But he says, I told them the hand of my God had been upon me for good, and also the words of the king had spoken to me. So, not only is God for me, but now we're beginning to see the practical implications. The king is for us, and the people are rallied. And they say, let us rise up and build. So they strengthen their hands for the good work. Hope and belief. Be honest. Things are hard. God is for us, and we can strengthen our hands, and we can believe and hope for better things to come. We reflect, we resolve, and then we keep remembering God is in the midst. If you can believe that God is gracious, yes, he's holy, but he's also merciful, and he wants good things for his children. If you can believe that, it's going to empower you to put your hand to the work, to be strengthened. That's what I want you thinking about this week. God is with you in whatever task you're in, however overwhelming it is, whatever the enormity of it is, God is for you. Put your hand to the work and trust in him. Blessings on you all.